Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter and analyst for Buha's Block, and welcome to another episode. On today's show, we're going to be doing part 2 of now a 3-part mailbag. We will be having part 3 come out next week. You guys asked over 40 questions, so doing my best to answer all of them. Without further ado, let's get into the mailbag. First question from Laker #1 fan. If we were able to land PJ, would you try and get JK or DJJ with part of the non-taxpayer mid-level exception to round out the forwards? I really like this question because there's been some confusion with LA's cap flexibility next summer. So I want to talk through that. And it's also timely because of the possibility of adding Jonathan Kuminga or PJ Washington or someone of that ilk, and those players potentially making somewhere between, say, like $13 million to $20 million, and how that would impact LA's cap situation next summer. And so the first thing here is Jonathan Kuminga might not be available next summer. I think if he signs a contract, whether it's with the Lakers or the Cavs or someone else, if he's agreeing to a sign-in trade, it has to be a 3+ year deal. So automatically that takes him out. Now there's a possibility he essentially signs the unrestricted free agent version of a qualifying offer, which would be him signing a 1-year minimum or 1-year taxpayer MLE or something along those lines. And he could re-enter free agency next summer. But realistically, I think Kuminga, if he does sign somewhere, is likely signing for at least a couple of years, if not a sign and trade where it's at least 3 years. So I don't think Kuminga will be an option for LA next summer if they don't land him this summer. Again, it's possible they could always trade for him as well. So there is another way to acquire him. But if we're looking at free agency in LA using that non-taxpayer MLE, I think that he will not be a realistic option for them. So it would be DJJ. And I would say, looking at the market, whether it's Lou Dort or Max Strus or Derrick Jones Jr., I think he's the guy that I would be most interested in if I'm the Lakers. So it would be a Dallas reunion with DJJ and PJ Washington starting for the Lakers potentially, or maybe one of them's coming off the bench. Maybe Adu or Cameron Carr pops, or LA continues to start Quentin Grimes and then brings one of those other guys off the bench. But if the Lakers are looking at next summer, I think as of right now, DJJ is probably the guy that makes the most sense to me based on who's projected to be available and who will be available potentially for that non-taxpayer MLE. Now, I want to get into the cap stuff because if you look at it, right now, the Lakers have roughly $199 million committed to next year's roster. And with cap holds, that actually goes up to about $214 million. For context, the first apron, which if you are using the non-taxpayer MLE, you'll be hard capped at the first apron. Once again, just like LA is hard capped there now, is projected to be $220 million. So that is a rough projection right now that could easily change. We've seen the last couple of years the projections be off a bit. So this could go up a bit, this could go down a bit. But for now, let's say $220 million. That would put the Lakers with the cap holds at just $6 million under the first apron. Now, realistically, I think some of these guys with cap holds won't be on next year's roster. Right now, the 4 guys they have as free agents are Jake LaRavia, Matisse Thybulle, Zaire Williams, and Kevon Looney. Realistically, let's say 2 guys are back, maybe 3 guys, but let's just put that to the side here. I think the more interesting thing is that $199 million includes 4 team options with Dalton Connect, Jaden Hardy, Adu Thiero, and Bronny James. And based on the salaries and the slotting of where these guys are in the roster hierarchy, I would expect LA to decline the $6+ million options for Dalton Connect and Jaden Hardy. So if you take that $12.4 million off of their books, they're actually closer to roughly $186.4 million in salary, which means that they're about $33.5 million under the first apron, which means they could comfortably add a player for that non-taxpayer MLE and still have some money left over to retain some of their free agents or make some other signings. They'll have the biannual exception, which is, I believe, supposed to be somewhere in that like $5.5-6 million range. They could access that. And then they also have potential minimum signings, to say nothing of whether they acquire a pick in either the first or second round. But a big but here is that's factoring in Jared Vanderbilt and Colin Sexton opting into their player options, which I had not yet touched on. And I will go out on a limb here and say Jared Vanderbilt will be exercising his player option for 2027-28. He's going to be making over $13 million, and he's just not going to make that on the open market. He's going to opt in. Then we get to Colin Sexton, who just under $10 million for the 2027-28 season. That will come down to what type of season he has this year. And is he LA's sixth man or potentially seventh man, depending on Mamu and Grimes and who's starting, who's coming off the bench. But I project him as at least the top 8 player in the rotation. And if he has a strong season, given the Lakers' ambitions, it would be his first postseason appearance. I could see him parlaying that into a bigger contract, potentially with the Lakers or someone else. And so that's the one where maybe Colin Sexton opts out, and then the Lakers have to make a call whether they want to retain him or not. Based on their limited bird rights with him, they'd only be able to give him an 120% raise. So you're looking at projected somewhere in that $11 million range. And that could be a 3-year, $30 million deal, $35 million deal, something like that. But it's obviously dependent on his season and what the market is for Colin Sexton. And if he can be a sixth man or potentially have a bigger role somewhere else, and just what that contract would look like. So the Sexton variable within this is like, if he opts out, that gives the Lakers even more flexibility, even more spending power. And so this all brings me to PJ Washington, who is at the heart of the premise of this question. And I had not mentioned him yet because I wanted to first talk through the Lakers cap situation and, at least the current cap situation, and lay out why I think the Lakers will be able to access that non-taxpayer MLE and have some flexibility under the first apron. But let's get into the nitty-gritty here with LA potentially acquiring PJ Washington. Based on how close the Lakers currently are to the first apron, they could not execute a deal like, say, Jaden Hardy and Dalton Connect, or Dalton Connect and Jake LaRavia. And the reason I mentioned those 3 names specifically is because you have a couple of team options in Hardy and DK, which we already established the Lakers would likely decline. And then you have Jake LaRavia, who's an expiring contract. So the key with trading those contracts for the Lakers would be those are guys you're already not projecting to be on your books. And that's appealing for Dallas. But then for LA, you are now taking back PJ Washington. So right now, we are not projecting the salaries of Hardy, LaRavia, or Connect on the Lakers. But if you're now adding PJ Washington's salary in, which is $21.4 million for the 2027-28 season, that would bump the Lakers up from projected $186 million all the way to a projected $207 million, or almost $208 million, with, remember, the first apron being at $220 million. So that would give you about $12 million to spend in terms of the non-taxpayer MLE. That's without factoring in the possibility of declining Bronny's team option, which would give the Lakers a little bit more flexibility. That's without factoring in the possibility of getting off Vando's contract. That's without factoring in the possibility of Colin Sexton opting out. So the Lakers have different pathways to clear some more space to fit in another non-taxpayer MLE guy. But I just wanted to talk through how that would potentially work. So in terms of a legal trade, it would have to be Hardy and LaRavia right now at the minimum in terms of the outgoing salary to salary match with PJ's contract, plus keep the Lakers under the first apron. So you could do Hardy and LaRavia. It would be a Hardy reunion for Dallas, plus LaRavia, plus whatever draft capital is required to make it work. I assume it would be at least 3 of LA's 4 draft assets. Or you could do Jared Vanderbilt, and you could take out Hardy and LaRavia. And if you just did Jared Vanderbilt, who's actually making more than Hardy and LaRavia combined, that would also be legal. To recap, the Lakers are in a strong position to access the non-taxpayer MLE as things stand, if they do make a trade for Jonathan Kuminga or PJ Washington or someone like that, and that salary is coming at the expense of some of the salary projected to be off their cap sheet, like a Hardy, like a Connect, potentially like a Laravia, though they could opt to re-sign him next summer, then that will be additional salary on the books that does push them closer to the first apron. And then they have to figure out a way to potentially clear more salary to access the non-taxpayer MLE, the biannual exception, and then to potentially get some minimum values to fill out the rosters. The swing factors here for LA are what is the potential outgoing salary in any trade for Kuminga, Washington, anyone else? Is it the expirings or is it Vando? And then it's what happens with Colin Sexton. Does he opt in or does he opt out? And if he opts out and has a real market and has a really successful season for the Lakers, they're now potentially in a position where they have to choose between using that non-taxpayer MLE to retain Sexton or letting him walk and missing that piece from the bench. And then the third and final thing would be if they don't trade Vando and they keep Vando on the books and he's now functionally an expiring contract next summer, what is the market for Vando? Has he rehabbed some of his value? Does he have some more appeal as an expiring? And can the Lakers flip him next summer or dump him next summer and then access the biannual non-taxpayer, et cetera? So those are some of the moving parts with LA's cap sheet and cap situation. But if they add PJ Washington or Kuminga or someone of that caliber in terms of salary, it is possible for them to still access the non-taxpayer MLE, biannual, et cetera. I will note that Kuminga's salary, especially if it's closer to like 13, 15 million, is easier to fit on the Lakers books and still access that non-taxpayer MLE compared to PJ's at 21 plus million. So that is a factor within all this, but I think PJ is a better player. I think PJ is a better fit. There's a reason why he's going to be making 20 plus million and Kuminga is unlikely to be making 20 plus million. And so as the Lakers would prefer to add PJ Washington and then figure it out on the back end. If you have to get off Vando, if you get off Vando in the trade, that would be great. But if you have to get off Vando next summer instead to access those other things, like just imagine if you can get off Vando and then you're looking at a situation where you add a DJJ or someone in that range to be your fifth starter. You now have Kessler, Washington, let's just say DJJ, Austin, and Luka, with your bench being potentially Grimes, Mamu, Sexton, Carr, and Adu, and then you use maybe the biannual exception on another big man, and that's like your top 11. That's a really strong top 11, assuming that Carr and Adu continue to progress and develop as we suspect. So the Lakers are, in my opinion, not that far away from dramatically improving the roster, but it is potentially contingent on them adding that piece this summer first, and then getting off of some money, moving some pieces around next summer and accessing that non-taxpayer MLE biannual. And so this is partly why I have been in favor of the Kuminga trade or the Washington trade, emptying the current asset clip just to get that locked in starter now and then go get the final piece or final couple pieces next summer. Speaking of Kuminga, next one from Eric Dane. Why are they going after Kuminga? He doesn't seem to fit either with his skill set or his attitude. Wouldn't it be better to wait for a better fit either at the trade deadline or at the mid-level exception next year? This is the most important question of the moment for the Lakers. Is Jonathan Kuminga worth it? Is he worth all this trouble, right? It's the second consecutive summer where there's just been a ton of noise, and Kuminga watch has gone further into the offseason than anyone initially anticipated, and it's just been this stalemate. And whether it's the Lakers or the Cavs, I think we all would like some sort of resolution here to move forward. What I will say, and I made this point on Lakers Collective earlier in the week, is that I think there is an element of Kuminga being the most attractive option and the most attainable option right now for a glaring hole on the Lakers roster. I think the Lakers have 3 locked-in starters in Luka, Austin, and Kessler. I have penciled in Quentin Grimes as the 4th starter based on his point of attack capabilities defensively, as well as the salary. He is now the 4th highest paid Laker. And I think the Lakers, just looking at the other guys that they signed, Quentin Grimes, I think, is better than all those guys, and the Lakers obviously put their wallet behind that. So I do expect Quentin Grimes to either be the fourth starter there or to be the sixth man at a minimum. Like he to me is locked in as a top six guy on this team and will either be that fourth starter or if they put him in a bench role, he will be, I think, a high 20s minute, like six man of the year type. And then that fifth guy, like we've discussed it ad nauseum, whether it's Mamu, Jake LaRavia, Zaire Williams, Matisse, one of those four guys I think would realistically start on the current roster. They each have a flaw or two that push them more toward being bench players than starters. And I think if the Lakers are trying to compete with the top teams in the league, having bench players in your starting group is just less than ideal. So I think right now the thing with Kuminga is that Kuminga is available, he is attainable, and he does fit the Lakers' need for that starting wing / forward who could defend threes and fours, rebound at a certain level, bring a certain element of athleticism, bring a certain element of offensive dynamism. And there's just a talent skill component to this where Kuminga checks that box. I also think if you look at the Lakers and some of their moves, like one of the things that the front office has consistently been fond of is former lottery picks, guys with a certain pedigree, guys with certain name value and recognition, and guys who could put the ball in the bucket. And if we've made the jokes about the combo guards and their love for that, but Kuminga's kind of a 6'8" combo guard, right? Like it is a very Lakers front office decision to like Kuminga and to pursue him. He's someone that they've previously had interest in, including last year ahead of the trade deadline. So it makes sense why they're interested in him. Now, whether he's the right answer, I think it's totally dependent on two things. First and foremost, what does the contract look like? I think once you're getting into that 17 plus, 18 plus $1 million range, that's a ton of risk on the Lakers side in terms of how that contract is potentially going to age and how he's going to fit within everything. If you're able to keep that $15 million or less, 12 million, 13 million, 15 million, that's the area I would be pushing for if I'm the Lakers. Something like 3 years, $40 million, 3 years, $45 million. I don't know if I'd go above that. And if you're Kuminga, obviously you're pushing for something closer to 3 years, 55, 3 years, 60. And so maybe they end up settling on 3 years, 50, something like that. That's maybe meeting in the middle. But if I'm the Lakers, I'm trying to keep that number as low as possible. The second thing, and arguably the most important thing, even more important than the salary, is Kuminga's mindset, his commitment to playing the role that the Lakers need from him, which I've made the point they need him to be their Aaron Gordon. They need him to be their Andrew Wiggins. They need that type of effort and energy and just doing the little things, putting your hard hat on and doing the dirty work despite having the skill and talent and past production to do more so buying into that role. They would need that from Kuminga. And I don't know if he is ready to commit to that role. I think he has the talent and he has shown flashes of being that type of rebounder, being that type of defender. But there's this mystery box component to adding Kuminga where you see the upside and it's high, but you also see the downside and it's relatively low, where I think there will be offensive production. He's a scorer. Like he's going to score wherever he is. But if he's not really defending, if he's not rebounding, if he's not making the extra pass, if he's not playing team basketball, if he's not playing within the confines of the Lakers system, then it's just the wrong fit. And then you are potentially in a position where this is a guy that already has some skeptics, has some doubters across the league. And I'm sure some team will talk themselves into him. But if it doesn't work out in LA as well, and now they're shopping him, at some point the league starts to be like, all right, if it didn't work out in Golden State, if it didn't work out in Atlanta, if it's not working out in LA, why should we expect it to work out here? So there is an element of, if this goes south, it will likely be a number that is still tradable, but I just wonder what the appetite for taking on Kuminga will be with 2.5 more years left on his contract. And him now, potentially in this scenario, flaming out in 3 consecutive spots and 3 teams being like, despite all the talent, despite whatever offensive production he's giving us, like he just does not fit our team, doesn't fit our vision for him. That would be concerning at that point. So right now, Kuminga is the most attainable guy. Now, does that mean he's the right guy? Is an entirely different question, and I don't know the answer to it. To your point about potentially waiting, the one thing I would push back on, and I would go back to my answer to the first question, would just be that I think the Lakers need 2 more starting level players. And that doesn't even necessarily mean one of those guys has to start, but I think the Lakers are a couple of starting level players short. So again, that could be one of those guys starting, one of those guys coming off the bench, and Grimes remains a starter, or it could be one of those players replacing Grimes. But I think as things stand, they need just a little bit more talent and guys making like 15 plus million and a little bit more middle depth. I think they have a ton of back end depth. I think they have a ton of bench depth, but I would like a little bit more talent behind the top 3. And so if I'm the Lakers, I'm trying to add 2 starting level players or high and bench level players. And you could do that with the non-taxpayer MLE, but that's only one guy. That's not 2. So whether that's flipping Vando next summer or maybe doing something at the trade deadline, in terms of like a pre-agency move, I still think they need 2 more guys, not 1 more guy. And so if you could get that guy now, whether that's Kuminga, Washington, someone else, that to me makes more sense of you can get that guy now and then still access the non-taxpayer MLE. Now, again, is Kuminga the guy? I'm not sure. I'm not sold. I would say I'm lower on Kuminga than consensus or than maybe the optimists. I have come more around to it in studying his game a bit and seeing the potential fit. And I think if he does buy in, he could be great in the role that the Lakers need. The question is, does he buy in? I understand the people who are against Kuminga. I understand the people who are for Kuminga. I'm somewhere in the middle. I wouldn't be opposed to it as long as the trade price isn't insane. And not giving up all your assets, not giving up Carr or Adu. As long as you're not doing that, and the contract is roughly 15 million AAV or lower, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with rolling the dice. If we're talking serious draft capital going out, or the Lakers siding him to like an $18 million AAV, $20 million AAV, that's where I'm personally out. And I think that the price is too rich, but we'll see. The Lakers have, I think, a ticking clock here with the Luka mini camp coming up in August, and just a lot still to figure out there's the Kawhi situation, Peyton Watson, and I think some of those moving parts will have an impact on Kuminga and his potential market. Maybe the Clippers pursue Kuminga if they eventually execute the Kawhi trade. And maybe if Peyton Watson ends up back in Denver soon, that also opens up more of the market for Kuminga because he's clearly behind Peyton Watson for everybody. I think we will likely get a resolution here soon, but this could drag on into late August, September. It could be 2 weeks from media day, and we're still talking, are the Lakers going to get Jonathan Kuminga? So Kuminga watch, I think, will be over relatively soon, but maybe it drags on. Maybe it drags on, through August and into September. And if that's the case, again, if you're the Lakers, you have to ask yourself, why is this so difficult? And is this the person that we really want to invest in, commit to? Is this person worth the trouble? And it's TBD on that. Next question from Ryan McWa. Do you feel that the Lakers match up better against OKC without Dort? They should be fine against other teams, but Dort was by far the best Luka defender on OKC. This is one of the most important questions of the Lakers season because they were swept last year by OKC. And we could look at, several of those matchups, they were shorthanded. OKC was also shorthanded in several of them. But you look at the regular season, they lose 4-0. You look at the playoffs, they lose 4-0, no Luka in the playoffs. So that's a major loss that completely changes that series. I think in theory, yes, the Lakers match up better because we can debate whether the Lakers are a better team now than they were last year, but I think they're undeniably a deeper team, which will help against OKC and problem solving and just lineup versatility and defensive options with the wings that they have now. I think they're in a better position to match up with OKC from that perspective. And then on the OKC side, they clearly lost some talent and depth with losing Lou Dort, Isaiah Joe, and Aaron Wiggins. So they now have some unproven guys, some untested guys at the back end of the roster. And so OKC, to me, is not as deep and not as capable of withstanding injuries in the regular season and playoffs as they were this past season. However, I will push back here on one thing. If you actually look at the data this year, one, Luka really struggled against OKC. I feel like this is something that's kind of flown under the radar and was almost excused because he got injured in the second half. But Luka did not play well against OKC in the 2 games. It was easily the team he struggled with the most this season. And those were two big games for the Lakers. There was the early season test in November, and then there was the game coming off of the incredible March they just had, and they got their ass kicked in both games immediately. And Luka was at the heart of it. It wasn't like Luka had a great performance and the rest of the supporting cast struggled. Luka in particular really struggled against OKC. And I have some of the data here. In terms of points per game, Luka averaged the fewest points per game against OKC than he did against anybody else. It was the only team in the NBA he didn't average at least 20 points per game against. And really, Luka's like lows against everyone else were in like the mid 20s. Like Luka was obviously the best scorer in the NBA last season, only averaged 15.5 points per game. That number is going to be deflated because the Lakers were blown out in both games. He didn't play a full game in either instance, exited midway through the third quarter of that second game, but still did not play well in either first half. Like that is just the objective truth here. He did not play well against OKC, shot 33.3% against them, lowest against any team, shot 14.3% on threes, lowest against any team, 43.4% true shooting percentage, lowest. And then the Lakers had a 90.6 offensive rating with Luka on the floor against the Thunder, which was his lowest offensive rating against any opponent. So Luka really struggled against them, which bucks the trend of prior success. If you go back even to the previous season, 2024-25, Luka was much better against OKC, as we saw with that baseball style series in OKC where the Lakers won one of them in blowout fashion. The second game, they're up when Luka gets egregiously tossed. So that season, he was much better against OKC. And then go back the prior season when they play OKC and beat them in the 2024 playoffs. So history suggests that this is more of a one-off random blip in terms of Luka's struggles against OKC, but I think it is noteworthy that that was the one team, in my opinion, where he just never looked comfortable in either of the two matchups. He cooked the Spurs, he cooked the Knicks, he cooked the Timberwolves, he cooked the Nuggets. Like pick all your top teams in the league, Luka cooked them, except OKC. That was the one matchup that he really struggled in. And if we now look at the actual data in terms of who defended him, Lou Dort and Alex Caruso only played in one of the two games. So this is an incredibly small sample size here. But if you look at who primarily defended Luka, it was actually Cason Wallace. And that was the one when I saw this question, I immediately thought of Cason Wallace and how much Luka struggled against him in particular with just the ball handling and setting up the offense in terms of the pick and roll. And Cason Wallace defended Luka nearly double the amount that Lou Dort did, over double the amount that Alex Caruso did. He defended him more than those two guys combined. And in those minutes, Luka went 3 for 11 against him, shot just 27%. Did draw a couple of fouls, which he didn't do against Dort and Caruso, but he did struggle. 4 turnovers to 4 assists. Technically against Dort, 2 turnovers to 0 assists. So you could say that Dort gets the edge there. And it is a small sample size, but I felt that Luka did struggle more with Wallace than Dort. That said, to the broader point here of the historical norms or trends with Luka versus OKC, Dort has been the guy who's been able to absorb his power and can match up with him, I guess, the best physically. So I'm not saying it's not a loss, but I'm just saying, at least based on last season when Luka really struggled against OKC, Cason Wallace was actually the one that he struggled the most against and was on him for the greatest amount of time. He did not shoot well against any of their 3 primary defenders. Again, 3 for 11 against Wallace, 2 for 5 against Dort, 1 for 4 against Caruso. So they each had their moments of limiting him. But I would note that I think leaning more into Wallace, Caruso, and Jalen Williams, I don't know that the Thunder are going to be that much worse, if not just potentially better. I think Wallace is, at this point of his career, a better defender than Lou Dort, which brings me to the second point here. The first point was Luka's struggles against OKC. The second point is, I think OKC redistributing the minutes from Lou Dort to Cason Wallace, AJ Mitchell, and Alex Caruso makes them a better team. I think those 3 guys are just better overall players. They're all better offensively than Dort. I would argue that Wallace and Caruso are both better defensively than Dort, though they have done that in smaller sample sizes, have not been as durable as Dort, as reliable as Dort. So that's something I want to give Dort credit for. But you look at last year, All three of those guys played more than Dort in the playoffs. There were instances in which they made adjustments, and those guys were starting in the second halves or certainly closing games over Dort. Dort really struggled in the San Antonio series, and he also struggled against the Lakers. If you look at the lineup data, the Thunder were 7.5 points per 100 possessions worse with Lu Dort on versus off against the Lakers in the playoffs, and 8.5 points per 100 possessions worse with Lu Dort on versus off in the regular season against the Lakers. Granted, he only played in one of the 4 games, so there was a lot more time with him off than on, but in the limited sample size of the second round series and the one game he played in, OKC was better with him off the floor than on the floor. They're still pretty good with him on the floor because they just killed the Lakers. The 4 regular season matchups and then led 90+% of the way in the second round series. But point being is, I think Lu Dort is a little bit overrated. I'm a little bit lower on him than consensus, and I think the lineup data matches that based on who defended Luka, based on how OKC fared with him on versus off against the Lakers. And so in summation here, I would say, yes, the Lakers matchup may be a little bit better, but I don't think they close the gap to any notable degree. And I think there's a chance where if Jalen Williams and AJ Mitchell are healthy and the Thunder are just replacing the Dort minutes with more Wallace, more Mitchell, and more Caruso, they're actually a better team, or at least a better top 8, top 9. And Dort at times was a real negative with his lack of offensive utility. He could not really play in the San Antonio series, and I think OKC needed to move on from him this summer or next summer, and at a minimum needed to move him into a smaller bench role. I think he could be a 15-minute a night guy on OKC, but with the talent they had, I think he was kind of holding some guys back. If Luka gets back to being who Luka has been against OKC the 2 prior seasons and not this past season, sure, it's a closer matchup and the Lakers match up better. But we just saw them repeatedly get their ass kicked last year, and that's something that the Lakers are going to have to figure out. Next one from Kant. Do you think there's a sense of anyone can win around the league after the Knicks won this past year? I don't think it's a hot take to say that I wasn't expecting the Knicks to win it all before this past playoffs. Feels like a bit of luck behind a solid team takes them to the conference finals now. Yes, I would agree with the premise of this question. I think if you look at the last 8 years, we've had 8 different champions, no repeats. Only the Lakers and Thunder have even gotten back to a conference finals after winning the championship, and the Thunder were the only team to do it in the following season. So every recent champion has lost in round 2 or earlier. That would suggest that we will have a new champion next year, and that could be potentially the Lakers. If I had to bet on a new champion, it would be the Spurs getting over the hump, or maybe things really click with Philly and they put it together and win a championship. I wouldn't have the Lakers at the top of that list, but certainly the Lakers will be in the mix. And I mean, this is the way that the league has been trending. This is what they wanted with the new CBA, greater parity, more NFL style results in terms of anyone can win on any given night. And you see some more turnover in terms of champions, fewer dynasties, fewer super teams, or if you put together a super team, or even if you organically grow a super team, you have to make some tough financial decisions that inevitably lead to you trading a Jaylen Brown, trade dumping a Lu Dort, and some of the decisions we've seen from teams like Boston and OKC over the past month or so. So yes, I mean, I would agree with you. I would say that the context here that I think is important is New York had been on several playoff runs with most of that core. They just made the conference finals the prior season. So I think there is still an element of OKC maybe bucked the trend, but most of the recent champions had been to at least the conference finals with the core of that group, right? So the Lakers were an exception, but the Bucks had been to the conference finals. The Warriors, the core of that group, had already won multiple championships together. The Nuggets had been to the conference finals in 2020 and then had a bit of a hiatus with Murray being injured for a couple of years. Then the Celtics have been in the conference finals multiple times. The Thunder are the exception, but they were a juggernaut in the regular season, and I just don't think the Lakers project to be a 60-plus or even 65-plus win team. And if they are, then that's a different story. But the Thunder kind of bucked that trend in terms of making the leap from a second-round team to a champion. And then you have the Knicks team, which had been several runs together, including making the conference finals the prior season. Point being, based on NBA history and even the recent champions, you got to go through some wars together. You got to go through typically at least a couple of playoff runs with that group. Now, we could debate whether Austin and Luka being on the last couple rosters, you throw in Vando, throw in Dalton, Bronny, some of these guys have been there for a bit, but like realistically, this is a new core. The Lakers have a new group outside of Austin and Luka in terms of like primary pieces. And so it does seem like they're going to have to go through the trial by combat at least once, if not a couple times, before finally breaking through and winning a championship. Like, you just rarely see teams put together that win a championship in their first year. Just go through NBA history. Like, remember, the Lakers won back-to-back titles after losing the finals the prior season, right? So I agree with you. I just think realistically, the teams that fit this are more so a San Antonio or a Cleveland, or maybe OKC recapturing the throne, maybe Indiana getting back to where they were now that Halliburton's back. Those teams with their infrastructure and their past playoff experience, to me, are more in line with this rather than the Lakers, who do have the core of Luka and Austin over the past couple of years, though Luka didn't play in this past postseason and Austin was only there for about half of it. But they have so many new pieces. Guys like Kessler and Sexton have not been in the playoffs. Grimes has been in the playoffs twice, Mamu once. And then they have a bunch of bench guys or rookie unproven guys. So I just think it's going to take some time realistically for the Lakers. It might be a situation where they need the trade deadline and next summer to really round out the roster, and then 2027-28, or in the worst case scenario, 2028-29, that's when they're really competing and breaking through and winning a championship. Next one from Sky Falcon 5. Do you think Carr and Adu can develop into the long-term 4th and 5th starters next to Luka, AR, and Kessler? What do they need to do to get to that level? Having rotation players on rookie deals seems like the only way to contend with this CBA. I cannot agree more with you, and that's why I'm going to have a question here after this one about potentially trading those guys for more established players. And my primary hesitation with that is just that it is invaluable to have guys like Cameron Carr and Adu Thiero on rookie deals for X amount of years, and then also being team-controlled assets to a degree with restricted free agency and the ability to match and lock them up for a second contract. Like, that is so valuable in today's CBA that you look at San Antonio, their 3 best players are on rookie scale contracts. OKC has guys like Kayson Wallace and AJ Mitchell, and the extensions are now kicking in with some of their guys, but like they also had cost-controlled guys, team-friendly contracts. And so that is really important, and the Lakers need more of that. You don't need a team full of it, but I think ideally you want at least 3 or 4 guys in your rotation to be on rookie scale contracts. As for Carr and Adu specifically, I think they have the upside to develop into those roles. I'm not sure if they will. I think I want to see more of them in training camp, the preseason, early season, before making that projection. I would say between the two, I think Carr is like the safer bet, I guess, to eventually become a starter, in part based on his pedigree, where he was drafted, and his college performance, and just his overall skill set. I think Carr is a bit more skill within his game than Adu does. There's also less of a health risk, which is really, I think, the biggest thing with Adu right now, even more so than his offensive game, is like, can he stay healthy? And with his playing style and the athleticism, like, what goes up must come down. Well, Adu's going up a ton with how much he's jumping and the force and power he's attacking the rim with to dunk on people or to grab rebounds or whatnot. And he's also falling down a lot and falling down hard. So I would say between the two, if I had to project, like, one of these dudes is going to be a long-term starter for the Lakers or elsewhere. Right now, I would say Carr is closer to being a sure bet. Now, in terms of what the Lakers need around Luka, Austin, and Walker in particular, I would say for Carr, he would need to grow into being more of a point of attack defender. Right now, he projects more of more as an off-ball defender, more as a help defender, leveraging his wingspan and athleticism as a guy who can get deflections and steals, and also as a weak side rotator to block shots and be something of a rim protector, which is rare for a guy in that 6'5", 6'6" range as more of like a two guard. So I think for Carr, he would need to improve his defense on the ball and be like, I look at Devin Vassell as someone that Devin Vassell was a better defender in college than Cameron Carr was, but they have similar builds. And if he can grow into being a Vassell level defender, that to me would allow him to be a starter. The other thing with Carr would just be his 3-point shot. We saw in Summer League, he did struggle with that, at least in Las Vegas. To me, he needs to be at least a league average, if not above league average 3-point shooter. And that's before factoring like the other elements of his game. But I think specifically with that group, that third perimeter guy or secondary backcourt guy needs to be able to shoot at a certain level, is primarily going to be off ball when you're playing next to Luka and Austin. So I like his cutting and his movement off screens in terms of the fit there. But the final thing would be, can he be a 38% catch and shoot guy around Luka and Austin and really make teams pay for potentially loading up against those guys? And then defensively, he needs to hold his own to a level where he's like clearly above Austin and Luka in terms of his on-ball defense. And so that's probably my bigger question. I think he can get there as a shooter. My question would be the defense, especially just how important that perimeter defender or backcourt defender is with Austin and Luka. Can he be that guy? And I don't know the answer to that. Like, I think he can be a starter on certain, in certain builds. Like I look at Detroit, and could you start Cade, Carr, and Oscar Thompson, where Cade's giving you an element of size. He's not the best defender, but he does have size and strength. And then Oscar is the lockdown guy. And Carr, you're not necessarily asking him to do a ton. I think if you've got more size and defensive capability with your overall backcourt and perimeter group, he's fine. But as of right now, I don't know that he could be like that lockdown perimeter stopper. As for Adu, I think it's the opposite, where it's more the offensive side of the ball. And as a 4, or I think he'd be the 4 offensively, and then defensively, he could defend multiple positions. There is an element of like, you need to be able to shoot. It's difficult to play, especially if Kessler doesn't pan out as a shooter or doesn't pan out as a high volume 3-point shooter. Adu not being able to shoot, it can work, but I think it pushes Kessler into a role as more of a spot up, catch and shoot big, pick and pop big, where I think you want both. You want the dual threat nature with Kessler rather than just turning him into Brook Lopez. So I think with Adu, it's more so, can the offensive flashes, the progress he showed in Summer League, can that translate to the NBA level? Can he not be sped up? Can he not solely rely on his athleticism with his drives? And can he continue to develop that skill? Can he be a reliable finisher at the rim? Does he have a floater game and sort of an in-between game a little bit? And then can he shoot? He's not someone I'm going to expect to shoot necessarily league average, but can he be at least like 32, 33% consistently, which is still several ticks below league average. But if he could be like a 33% 3-point shooter with his athleticism and power and strength and just his physical tools, that's a guy who's at least a valuable rotation player, if not potentially a starter, depending on his defense. So I'd say for both guys, the shot is a huge element here of, can they shoot, in Carr's case, above league average, in Adu's case, slightly below league average. And then defensively, can they both continue to level up, where Adu, I think, has the potential to be an all defense caliber guy. If Adu turns into an all defense defender, then he can't start, right? Even with the questionable shot, although that will present some problems in the playoffs. Those would be my questions with those two guys. I think they have the physical tools to start, the physical profiles to start, and they do check some boxes already of like, Adu has the rebounding, has the defense, has the motor that you want from that position. Carr has the off-ball utility, can get out in transition, can be a cutter, can be a spot-up guy that you want around Austin and Luka. So I think they already have the outlines of guys who can fill those positions. I just think it's about rounding out their skill sets and being better overall on both sides of the ball. And it's too early to determine whether they could do that. We need far more of a sample size, probably even past this season, but potentially as soon as next season. I think either one of these guys could be a starting level player. And if that's the case, I think the Lakers are in a great spot because, to your point, they will have a valuable player on a rookie deal. Next one from Abe to Babe. Would you be willing to include Adu and or Cam in a trade for a player like P. Watt or Trey Murphy? If not, who are some realistic options that you think including them would be worth it? This is assuming the Lakers would have the flexibility to match salaries and the other team actually values Adu and Cam the way the fan base does. So after waxing poetic about both those guys, we are now putting them in the trade machine. I'll keep this one short and sweet. Yes, I would give both of them up for Trey Murphy. I think there's no guarantee that either one of them becomes as good as Trey Murphy or that they even collectively are as good as Trey Murphy. I think Trey Murphy is an all-star level scorer / shooter who is, I wouldn't even say like hiding in plain sight, but just needs to be saved, needs to be rescued from New Orleans and their situation. And so he's someone that I think is legitimately worth at least a couple first-round picks, if not potentially up to 3. And so I would put Adu and Cam. Like if the Lakers had a potential deal on the table of Adu, Cam, and their current draft assets of 3 seconds and a swap, plus matching salary for Trey Murphy, I would do that in a second. It's not a perfect fit defensively with Luka, Austin, and Trey. I think people continue to overlook some of Trey's defensive limitations and deficiencies. He's not this wing stopper, despite being 6'8" and having the wingspan and looking the part of a defensive stopper. That's not really what the data says. He projects as more of an average-ish, if not even below average defender. So that's a part of his game that you have to figure out. And maybe that opens up a pathway to trading Austin, where you now have another scorer, not the level of ball handler or playmaker or passer that Austin is, but you do have another all-star level talent on the roster, and then you could potentially flip Austin for that bigger forward that rounds out the starting group. I think it does give you some optionality to pivot if you need to in the future because you have more overall talent and skill. So Trey Murphy, I think it's a no-brainer. For Peyton Watson, I would say I would trade one of them. I would not trade both, and my preference would be to trade Adu and not Cameron Carr. I really like Peyton Watson. I know he's a polarizing player. Some people look at the limited sample size from last year, and I totally get it. I get why people have their concerns. Really, my primary concern with Peyton Watson is the health and just the hamstrings and like whether he'll be able to withstand the rigors of long seasons, deep playoff runs for multiple years. I think that's a fair question and a fair reason to have some concern about potentially committing to him. But similarly, like Peyton Watson is a starting level player that I think if he was an unrestricted free agent would be making 20 plus million this summer, if not potentially 25 plus million this summer. And so just guys like that, basically 25 plus $1 million starting level wings don't become available often. And the price to get those guys is high. And could Adu and Cam eventually grow into being that, those types of players? Yes. But realistically, I think they're both at least like 2 years away from that. I would be pretty surprised if that happened this season. I would even be surprised if it happened the following season. Maybe in 2028, 29, they're that level of player. But at that point, you are now approaching Luka being almost 30. Austin would be 30. I just wonder if you've maximized the window around Luka, around Austin, around Kessler, waiting for Adu and Cam to pop. So there very much is a now versus later, like an instant gratification versus a long-term reward. Just the thing is, when those guys pop, if those guys pop, like we don't know that they're going to pop for sure. And if they do, I still think it'll be at least a year, if not 2 years, until they're really in those types of conversations. And maybe the Lakers are patient and want to wait that out. But I think Trey Murphy, it's a no-brainer to me. I would be pretty surprised if Adu or Cameron Carr ever end up being as good as the current version of Trey Murphy. Peyton Watson, there's some more risk there with the health and the smaller sample size of his success. That one, I'd be willing to entertain trading one of the two, but not both. And again, my preference would probably be trading Adu and keeping Cam, but you can make an argument for the opposite. And I think they are relatively close in terms of assets, though I think, again, Cameron to me projects as more of a potential starter or six-man type, whereas Adu could grow into that, but I think he might end up being more of a better Vando, which like is a valuable player, but I think that's more of a bench defensive stopper role, energy player rather than being a starting level player. But who knows? Like, I mean, they both have immense potential. I like both of them. If I'm the Lakers, I'm fighting tooth and nail to keep both of them and not trade them. But I think Trey Murphy is enough of a talent that I would trade both for him. Peyton Watson, a little bit more iffy in terms of trading both, but would trade one of the two to acquire him. Next one from Legendary Sage. Do you think JJ is the right coach for the team? And also, what are some things you would like to see him improve on next season? I do think JJ is the right coach for the team. I think JJ has exceeded expectations up to this point. Back-to-back 50-win seasons, back-to-back, really should have been back-to-back top 3 seeds in terms of finishes in the West. But the Lakers' end of season was derailed by the Luka and Austin injuries. But the Lakers, I think if Austin and Luka don't go down, end up being the number 3 seed. And I think would have lost to San Antonio in round 2, but I think it would have been a more competitive series than that OKC series. And it would have been interesting. I think the Lakers get a game, maybe 2, and it would have been a more satisfying result for the season. And I think there's like a sliding doors moment of just, if the Lakers lost in like 6 to San Antonio and San Antonio still makes the finals and loses, is LeBron back? Like, do the Lakers view everything differently? It's just, that's not how things played out. So we don't know. But I think JJ has been close to maxing out the group in the regular season in both instances. Both seasons have followed similar patterns in terms of solid start to a mid-season malaise to a strong close to the season, and then, depending on how you view it, a disappointing end in the playoffs. But I would give JJ, honestly, probably an A- through his first 2 seasons, especially factoring in the lack of prior coaching experience. Like, maybe if he had been an assistant coach somewhere for 2-3 years, I would drop that to like a B+, but factoring in no serious coaching experience and what he's been able to do with this group through 2 years, I've been very encouraged by it. I think the biggest blemish on his resume would be that Minnesota series and how unprepared the Lakers looked, how thoroughly they got their ass kicked. But aside from that, I think they bounced back in a nice way with the Houston series. And again, OKC, just didn't. OKC was just better, and they didn't have Luka. So I would say JJ is the right coach for the team. I remain bullish on him. I think he has the upside to be a top 5 coach in the NBA. And I expect him to be the Lakers coach for the foreseeable future. I think he's going to be this could be a guy who's here 7, 10, 12 years. I would not be surprised by that result. I think he could be the long-term answer for the Lakers. And I think he is the long-term answer, but just with the fickle nature of coaching and the lack of job security, you just never know when someone is going to be let go. But I would say JJ for me, like if you put the over under 6.5 years for JJ to be the Lakers coach, I would take the over on that. So I think he is the right coach. Now, he's not perfect, and there are 3 things that I think JJ can improve on for next season and beyond. First and foremost, I think the offensive optimization, which is something I will touch on in the third mailbag, but just the offense to me has been the one thing where I think the Lakers offenses have been closer to like a B level relative to their talent than the defense, which I think the defense has been more of like an A- based on the talent, right? So like he squeezed a lot more juice out of the defense, in my opinion, than the offense. So that would be my one criticism in terms of like the general, like both sides of the ball. I think the Lakers have overachieved defensively and underachieved offensively during JJ's tenure. So I think he can be better with keeping the group organized, keeping the group running sets, running plays, not as much freelancing, ISO ball, and just some of the mistake-prone stretches that they can have at times when the offense is really in the mud. So that'd be one general criticism that I think could be better moving forward. Second thing would be relying a bit more on the bench, which I think this group is now better positioned to do that than the 2 prior groups. But we've just seen JJ have a very short leash with the bench, have a very short leash with young guys. And in general, I think he can do a better job of reducing the minutes of his starters, reducing the minutes of the stars in particular, playing guys like Luka and Austin a little bit less, and then relying more on the bench. And then the third thing, and this is related to that second point, would be some more experimentation. Like JJ, the audience has joked on here, is like Tibbs Jr. at times, where he's really going after every single win, and every single game is like a game 7 for JJ, which is a great approach to have. but I think there needs to be a little bit more of a balance with him where the Lakers are experimenting a bit more with defensive coverages and different lineups and just really testing and tinkering with things. And I think we saw that to a degree last season with the 2-3 zone, but I thought it had some success and then he went away from it. And they had like the double big look with Timmy and Ayton, and he just went away from it. And so like the points 2 and 3 kind of blend together in terms of trusting the bench, trusting young guys, and experimenting a bit more. But I would like to see the Lakers get a bit more funky and tinker and test things in the regular season that can apply more in the playoffs. I think JJ has done that a bit. I'm not saying he hasn't at all or that he's super rigid, but I think there is a little bit of rigidity with his approach. And I would like to see him experiment and be a little bit more open-minded and it not be as much injury induced and rather just be more proactive decision-making from his part. So I would like to see him, in terms of like this roster in particular, rely more on Cameron Carr and Carr Thiero, rely on some small ball looks. Let's see what you have with Adu at the 5. Let's see what you have with stretches with Mamu at the 5. Then also look at some 2 big looks with Mamu at the 4 and what that looks like with Kessler. And then also test some bench, switching groups with Zaire and Matisse and Adu and some of just see what that looks like and just test, throw out, you could throw out a 2-3 zone, you could throw out a 1-3-1. You have different options with some of the bench defensive talent that they have. So I would just like to see from him again, better optimization, organization, and control over the offense, trusting the bench and young guys a bit more, and then also experimenting a bit more, using the regular season as a testing ground for the playoffs when you'll need to problem solve on the fly. And it's better to have tested those things at least a few times in the regular season rather than throwing them out blindly in the playoffs. So those would be my 3 things for JJ, but I remain high on JJ. I believe he's the right coach for the Lakers. I believe the Lakers believe he's the right coach for them, and I think he's going to be there for quite some time. And then final one from Kant again. How likely is a trade involving Hardy actually? He got official posts on all the social media platforms and he got introduced to the locker room. Would probably look bad if he gets traded after all of that. My understanding of this is that is just normal protocol, and the Lakers did welcome him and introduce him. But make no mistake, if the Lakers can trade for Jonathan Kuminga, or if they are open to trading for PJ Washington, or if someone else emerges and the matching salary is going to be Jaden Hardy, they are not going to keep Jaden Hardy out of the trade. So while I believe they would rather trade Jared Vanderbilt and or Dalton Connect than Jaden Hardy, that doesn't mean that Jaden Hardy is some untouchable asset. Like right now, he does not project in the primary rotation. So I think at best, you can make a case for him as like the 12th man on this team. So guys in that range who are making above the minimum tend to be more negative value contracts. Like Jaden Hardy up to this point has been more of a minimum level player than a $6 million player. So I understand that people kind of were freaking out about, oh, they introduced him, they gave him the LA welcome. Like, I think that's just the Lakers being a good organization and welcoming a player that they acquired via trade. Like, I mean, what were they supposed to do? Like, not give him the LA welcome and give him this cold shoulder of, hey, like, we're going to trade you immediately or we're looking to trade you. And if we don't, all of a sudden we'll welcome you. Like, that's just not really how it works. So there are situations where a guy will be traded to a team and it'll be worked out with his agents where it's like, look, we have no plans to keep this guy. We're going to flip him. So just don't get comfortable here. We're looking to trade you. It's not that situation, but I don't think it's also, oh, Jaden Hardy is our new backup point guard, backup shooting guard. He's our new 6th man. He's like a locked in part of the rotation. It's not that either. So again, I think the Lakers are looking to explore different avenues in terms of different players they're trying to trade, with Vando and DK being at the top of that list. But Jaden Hardy, if it comes down to it, and that's the final piece to make the math work, Jaden Hardy will be included in a trade. The Lakers already have Colin Sexton, Cameron Carr, Matisse Thybulle, Zaire Williams. You could throw Bronny in there. Like there's plenty of backcourt competition off the bench. Hardy could emerge. You could throw Dalton in there as well. Hardy could emerge as a rotation guy, but I think he's closer to the back end of that list. And with the expiring, that might be the most enticing money to potentially trade aside from Dalton. So I understand why people reacted the way that they did or had all the conspiracy. Oh, he's not being traded. My understanding is that's not Like, he's not untouchable. So if it requires trading him, I believe he'll be traded. So just wanted to clarify that. But with all that said, appreciate you guys for rocking with me. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back soon. I will talk to you then.